Hi, my name is Francesca McDowall and I'm going to be reading Tina D's story in my new book, Surviving Spiritual Abuse. Tina D's story. I never expected that one of the most traumatic experiences of my life would come through a leader in the church which I was a member of. It is something that shook me to my core as the incident was unexpected and seemed to come from nowhere. Although it happened 12 years ago, I remember the day as if it was yesterday. I, along with 6 other church leaders, were in a leadership meeting. I was taking the meeting minutes as I supported with admin, finance and secretarial aspects of church life. We'd nearly reached the end of the meeting and on the agenda, the subject of team building came up. Another leader had made a suggestion that it would be nice to go bowling or do an activity together so we can be more open with one another. But it's like that was the match that caused the volcano to erupt inside one of the senior leaders. We'll call her Rose. She started on a cynical rant about opening up. You want people to open up. Some people are as closed as a fish, but they know how to take your husband off to a hotel. She started shouting loudly at me, insinuating I had something going on with her husband as we had gone off into a hotel together. And if I thought that was acceptable, then something was wrong. And if you have anything to say, you should say it in front of me. She went on, and it shook me to my core. She was very aggressive and stunned the whole meeting into silence. After which, things went from bad to worse in her and her husband's Charles' behaviour toward me and their general attitude. Just to be clear, I had gone for a church business meeting with Charles in a cafe located in a hotel. It was a public place and there was no hidden agenda. And this was not uncommon as we had no designated church office. The fact of the matter was there had been other female church members who had one-to-one meetings with Charles, who was the senior leader. It was part of general church life. Other leaders had also remarked that they went for meetings and Rose was aware and it was no issue. So it then became clear that I was being targeted and there was a very uncomfortable atmosphere. Rose would often watch me in church, sometimes leaving her seat and going to the back of the hall. I was not being paranoid, but I could feel her eyes on me, and if I glanced around, her eyes would meet mine. It's as if I wasn't allowed to speak to her husband, Charles, even though it was only ever about church admin, secretarial and finance areas. She would appear out of nowhere, sometimes snatch things out of my hand. It was awkward and uncomfortable. On the day of the incident, I left the leadership meeting stunned and shocked. It affected me so greatly that I even damaged my car when I was driving home. I felt like I was in a traumatized daze, still not quite believing that the humiliating experience had really just happened, as it was unbelievable. A few days later, I did receive a token apology, but the issue was not addressed and the tables were turned and I was accused of being rude and having an attitude. It was soul destroying. I suspected that Rose had an issue with me, but had no idea how deep this was. I felt so bad. It would have been better to have been stabbed with a knife. It was so humiliating. I felt church should have been a safe, secure and supportive place, but it was the total opposite. And it was the beginning of me losing faith in human beings and the ability to trust. It was a toxic environment. But despite this, I stayed at church as I believed I was serving God and I genuinely wanted to help. Up until a few years ago, when they made the decision to get rid of all the leaders, I'd been committed there for almost 20 years in so many aspects of the church. I felt like I'd been treated like rubbish. I spent the next year in a daze, hardly even wanting to go to church. And at the moment, I go to a large church and choose not to get involved because of what I've experienced. It's like I'm unconsciously living in a self-protective stance. There were times I felt God had failed me and questioned why he allowed this to happen. In spite of it all, I continue to trust God.